alcohol. Is that something that how badly does that affect your diet? I'm just curious for a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
That's the best way. I'm asking for a friend of mine, actually. He's really curious. Drinks a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of keto or just lifestyle in general?
Keto. Well, I guess both.
Like for keto, like if you're trying to get on the ketogenic diet and you're trying to like get fat adapted, I would say your best bet is to limit as much as possible, especially like beer, cocktails, things like that. They just have a lot of stuff in there that's going to throw you out of ketosis really fast. If you are going to have a drink or something, you can go with like whiskey, vodka, tequila, anything like that are pretty clean for the most part. They will kick you out of ketosis a little bit, but they're much cleaner and won't spike it as much.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to this episode of The Formula, where we break down and explore the elements of health, wealth, happiness, and achievement with guests from all over the world. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson, and I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys today. I've been really pumped to share it since we recorded it. So let's rewind a couple months. I noticed I had a new follower on Instagram, Dr. Brady Salcido. And normally I don't click on everybody who follows me on Instagram's profile, but I started checking his out and I noticed he had a lot of great information about, optimizing your mind and body for high performance, specifically through the ketogenic diet. And so I reached out to Dr. Brady and invited him to be on the show. So I'm really pumped that this week's guest is Dr. Brady Salcido. He's a chiropractor from California, who also runs a company online called Neruolifestyle, or you can head over to the neruolifestyle.com. We'll link to that in the show notes. On this episode, Dr. Brady Salcido and I talk about what is the ketogenic diet. We all hear about all these new fads, these new diets in a box, and do any of us really actually know what a lot of it means? So we really dive into the science a bit behind the keto diet and try to understand why people feel so good while they're on the keto diet. What are some quick tips to get on the keto diet or move closer to it today? What is intermittent fasting and what are the benefits of it? And really, what is the process for getting your brain and your body to operate at its highest capacity so you can really be, the best physically and mentally version of you. So really excited to share this episode with you. Name yet, so I'm really happy about that. But without me rambling on any further, let's get this show started. Let's talk about the keto diet and optimizing your health with Dr. Brady Salcido. Brady, thank you so much for taking the time to show up on the Formula podcast this week. And when I reached out to you, I noticed you were doing a lot of ketogenic posts on Instagram, and it seemed like you're doing a lot of really interesting work in that area. And we hear a lot of buzzwords, like everyone's like, I'm on keto, I'm getting on that ketogenic diet, I'm
#keto.
Yeah, #keto life, So I feel like I have a general idea of what keto or the ketogenic diet is, or ketosis. But maybe do you want to walk us through what keto is or what that even means?
Totally. So keto or the ketogenic diet, keto would be short for ketogenic diet, is essentially a diet where you are essentially trying to get the body to become a better fat burner, essentially. And so the purpose is, when we look at the systems of our body, the main way our body metabolizes energy is through these things called mitochondria. And your mitochondria are basically like your cells' batteries, if you will. And they really use two forms of energy. So if you think like the big macro picture, like you have your proteins, you have your carbs, and then you have your fats, right? Your mitochondria don't really use protein for fuel. That's just for building muscle and collagen and all that sort of stuff. But then when you look at sugar and fats, those are two energy sources that our mitochondria like to use to fuel our energy and fuel every process of the body. Now, what happens is if you give the body more carbohydrates, which break down into sugar or glucose, the body gets really, really good at burning sugar and glucose. It gets really good. So if you think of each one of them like a muscle, we get really good at burning one or the other. And especially with our standard American diet, 60% of our diet, we've been told to have carbs, sugar, right? You want to have lots of bread, lots of pasta because your brain needs energy. Carbs are a great source of energy, right? That's what we've been told. I was even told that as I was going to get my doctorate. Yeah, you got to do this, that is 60% carbohydrates. But then we find out that, we're just getting so good at burning sugar that our body starts to lose out on its ability to actually burn fat. And so the whole purpose of the ketogenic diet is to introduce a high fat, low carbohydrate diet into our body to train our body to start using that fat burning system better and more efficiently. So that's basically the ketogenic diet in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's an interest. So I didn't even know that that's why. I just knew it was like low carb. I didn't realize that, you're basically training your body. I remember like the food pyramids, like whatever, 80% carbs or something like that,
yeah, exactly.
or grains and, or grains. And, I didn't realize that your body gets kind of trained just to burn carbs like that and sugar and just kind of like leaving the fat. And it's interesting that you say that like your brain needs like the energy from the carbs and the sugar, because I've actually found it to be almost the opposite personally, where like the more carbs I eat, the more I feel like I can't think straight. Is that
right?
Is there some actual like science to back that up?
Totally. So like the more you have like a high carbohydrate or a high sugar meal, let's say you go out and let's say we go out and we just have like some Italian food. We have some pasta, we have some garlic bread. Like it sounds delicious, right? And It tastes so good while you're doing it. But what happens is when you get that sudden spike of sugar from the carbohydrates, because carbohydrates essentially just load your body up and they break down into sugar in the body anyway. So as soon as your body gets this sensitive organ you have to inflammation, and so it's probably 20, 30 minutes after you have that high carbohydrate meal, all of a sudden your brain gets this wave of inflammation, and all of a sudden you start feeling super tired. And as soon as that sugar comes down, you come down right there with it, which is why most people don't feel super great on a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet. They just don't have the energy. They're constantly fatigued. They don't have like the brain power they do, which I think is part of the reason why a lot of people get hooked on ketogenic diet, is because they do feel really, really good. They feel more productive. And that's what got me hooked on it personally is, I wasn't looking at it for more of the weight loss. I had already lost all the weight initially, but I had gotten hooked on it because I was like, wow, I feel like super clear and focused throughout the day. And if I can keep this going 24/7, I'm sold.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I went through the same process. I don't even remember how I got onto that diet in the first place, but I think somebody else must have done it, and I just noticed a change in their mood and their energy level. And I was like, damn, I want more energy. Like I remember sitting at my computer, getting that brain fog feeling, and then being like, this doesn't seem normal. Like I don't know why this is happening. I feel like I'm eating what I'm supposed to be. I don't eat a lot of like sweets. Why is this going on? And then I talked to this other person that had gone through that change, and they're like, oh yeah, no, I don't eat like any grains, any bread, anything like that anymore. And they're like, I dropped like 10, 15 pounds in the first month, didn't really change anything else. And I just feel great. I'm in a much better mood. I feel like I can just go all day. I can do everything I want to do. And it's just a better lifestyle.
100%.
Yeah. So if somebody, I imagine that a lot of people come, like when they talk to you about keto or they see your posts, they're like, man, that's great, but how do I even get started? Like what's the first step for really getting onto like a ketogenic diet?
Yeah, the first steps really is to understand where you're getting your carbs from. So when you look at this is a whole new type of eating, right? When we talk about something like paleo or something like that, there's certain foods that you just like, you have to get out, right? With a ketogenic diet, it's a different animal altogether, because you're looking at where are all the sources of carbs and sugars, which come in a wide variety of different foods depending on what you're eating, right? So we need to understand, one, where are carbs coming from, and diminish those as much as possible within reason. You're still going to get a little bit from your vegetables and things like that. And so the first step is obviously reducing your carbs as much as possible. And, I think it helps to get some help and resources when it comes to the ketogenic diet personally, because there's a lot of nuances that come into play, especially as you go through the first couple phases, which I'll talk about in a sec. And then the other one is to understand where can you get good, healthy fats from? Because obviously you can get bad fats from, like conventional butter, or you can get it from McDonald's or things like that. You can get bad fats out there. But the key is going to be finding where can I get my high quality fats that are going to give me energy. And then from there, you have this this high fat, low carbohydrate lifestyle that's going to essentially be kind of the kickstart to your ketogenic diet. And I think those of you out there who are already starting or thinking about starting, you need to understand that your first couple of weeks on the ketogenic diet are not going to be the most fun out of all the diets out there. You're not going to get the immediate benefits right away. And I always say it's like when you go to the gym for the first time, maybe after a couple months, like you're crushing in the gym, you're feeling great every time you go in. But the first couple times you go in, you're super sore. Like you can't walk straight. It's hard to go to the bathroom for a couple of days because you can't sit straight. I mean, it's just like, it's rough for the first couple of days. The same thing happens when our body, when we're retraining this fat muscle, we have to detox a little bit. We have to train these new systems. It's a little bit groggy. You're a little bit more lethargic, a little bit more of that brain fog, kind of like you were talking about. But then all of a sudden it's like the haze gets lifted and then the clarity comes in, the energy comes in, and then you really start kicking it into high gear.
Yeah, I like the gym analogy because I'm like limping around a little bit today. But I think a lot of people get stuck on, like even with the gym too, a lot of people get stuck on, they want like immediate returns, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're like, well, I stopped eating carbs or bread or processed carbs for a week and I just felt terrible. And so I quit. It's like, well, maybe it takes a little longer than that. Like,
yeah, exactly. Or they quit the carbs, but they don't get more fat in. Because if you think about it, if you just cut your carbs, but you don't get more fat in, all you're doing is you're robbing your body of two energy sources that it needs, right? So the whole point of getting more fat is we need to give our body another energy source that it can use. And fat's a great energy source. It's basically causes less inflammation than burning sugar does, and actually gives you more energy per unit than sugar does, which is why people feel so amazing on the ketogenic diet, especially with their brain performance, is because it's low inflammatory response from the body. So it keeps inflammation nice and low, which is why people recover really well on the ketogenic diet, especially after workouts. And then also it's got tons of energy in it, which is really great. And it's also satiating. It's filling. So you're not as hungry. You're not going through these waves of insulin response and sugar response where like you're feeling like you have a craving every hour that you're not eating carbs. So it's just some of the main reasons why I love it.
Do you have any quick ways to get the like any? I'm trying to phrase this in a very specific way. What are some quick ways that you find to be easy ways to get like good amounts of fat? Like, do you have any quick snacks or anything like that you make?
Yeah. So for me personally, I use like right now, I'm drinking the bulletproof coffee. You probably heard that. Or like
hell yeah.
Brain octane oil or MCT oil is. They're just different types of fat. And both of them are very readily able to be used as energy for the body. And so when you put them into your stomach, they're already basically ready to be digested. So they get absorbed super fast and they get used for energy right away. Whereas something like coconut oil or butter gets burned a little bit slower. So when you combine the butter and the MCT oil, you get immediate energy from the MCTs, but then long-term energy from the butter. So that's kind of why bulletproof is such an amazing cocktail that I have every single morning and I use. So that's one of the first ways I get tons of fat in is from that. And usually when I have my lunch, first thing I have is like half an avocado. It's another way to get great fats in. And then also I'll drizzle like regular olive oil on there, or I'll use MCT oils in my salad, things like that. And also I love fat bombs. Have you ever heard of those?
Mm-mm. What's a fat bomb?
A fat bomb. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
A fat bomb is essentially like a coconut oil dessert. So what you do is basically the way I make it is you put coconut oil into a pan, you put raw cacao in there. You put coconut oil, cacao, and then I sweeten it with stevia, so it's still no sugar in there. And then you put them into like a little mold and you harden them, and they become these like little desserts that actually fill you up. So at like the end of dinner, let's say you're still like just a little bit hungry and you want a little bit of sweet tooth, you eat one of these things that are like maybe that big, but they fill you up right away and they taste awesome. Tastes like a Reese's, essentially. You put like a little bit of peanut butter in there too, and it's awesome. Yeah. I'll share my recipe with you and your listeners too, so you guys can have that. Yeah. Yeah. So his mouth is watering right now. Like, God, that sounds so good right now.
So you said that you went to medical school and they kind of were teaching you about, eating a lot of carbs and the whole food pyramid, what we're typically taught in school about your good diet, I guess, however you want to call it. How did you find out about the ketogenic diet, and how did you really, what was your path getting into it?
What's interesting is I actually found out about the ketogenic diet through intermittent fasting first. So I had a buddy of mine, Dr. Mike Vandershelden. We went to school together. He wrote a book on intermittent fasting. And so I saw the results he was getting with intermittent fasting, and just aesthetically. And I was like, man, I want to look shredded like that. That sounds good. So I started intermittent fasting with the whole purpose of losing weight. And then I started to notice during my fasting period, I was feeling really, really good. I just had tons of energy without eating breakfast, and which is counterintuitive, because I used to be that kid who if I didn't have breakfast, I'd be shaking all day. Mm-hmm. But that was because I was so sugar dominant. I hadn't trained my fat burning system. And so I started learning that during this fasting state, right after 10 to 12 hours of fasting, your body already gets into ketosis because it's burned through all its sugar. And so I started looking into this. I'm like, man, how do I keep my body in ketosis 24/7 if I feel that good on ketosis? And then that led me towards the ketogenic diet, which is why you'll often see a lot of posts or a lot of people who do intermittent fasting and keto, because intermittent fasting is kind of a perfect way to segue right into keto. And keto helps your body stay in ketosis even after you've broken your fast, which is why a lot of people like it. Also helps you get through the keto flu a little bit quicker, because it just helps your body burn ketones a lot faster. So I actually found out about intermittent fasting, and that's how I stumbled upon keto.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, intermittent fasting is just basically all right, so this is going to be my non-medical definition, but it's when you essentially don't eat for a specific period of time with the intention of training your fat burning system, and it's good for your body because I don't know. Finish that sentence for me.
Yeah. So essentially, I'll give a little backstory of it. The main reason we found out about fasting, you've heard about fasting in the biblical times, or even throughout history, they've done fasting for religious reasons and all sorts of stuff. But what we found is that fasting is actually really, really good for the brain. So some of the main benefits they saw was actually in epileptics whose seizures started going away because they were fasting. And so we find that there are some substantial benefits to fasting, but let's be honest, nobody wants to fast for 24 to 48 hours, or even, any more than we have to, right? I hate skipping breakfast. That's already enough for me to skip breakfast, right? So I don't want to fast all day. But what we found is that you can actually strategically plan your eating within an 8-hour window, and it allows you to get all the benefits of fasting. So yes, it helps your body get into ketosis faster, but also it stimulates a process in the body called autophagy, which is basically your body's natural detoxification system, which is actually when your body, now that it's not having to use energy to digest your food, which takes energy to digest and break all that down, it then uses that energy to say, let's go through the body and let's just clean house. Let's see what cells are kind of sick and damaged, and let's basically signal them to destroy themselves, clear it out, and actually keep the good healthy cells. That's what autophagy really is. And so it stimulates that, does some amazing things for your brain, actually stimulates human growth hormone. So there's some pretty substantial benefits that happen, which is why people don't lose muscle while they intermittent fast. And so intermittent fasting is basically kind of hacking the system in a way. You don't have to fast for a full day, but you can just plan your eating within a certain window, and allows you to get all the benefits of fasting without getting hangry, essentially.
Yeah, and hangriness is never good for anyone.
Anyone, especially me.
Right. Yeah, I just recently got back from traveling over in Europe, and I don't ever remember feeling hangry, but I was all right, or previously before my trip, and I was walking somewhere. You just walk everywhere while you're there. And I remember being really grumpy. And I'm like, why am I grumpy? I'm in the middle of Europe on vacation. And I sat down a half hour later, and I ate this huge meal, and then I felt fine. I'm like, oh, okay, that's hangry. I'm like, okay, I get it now. What that feels like. Yeah. So maybe I do get a little hangry just like everyone else.
Everybody does.
Right. So your business that you run focuses a lot on eating healthy, really cultivating a healthy lifestyle. It's called neruolifestyle, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you want to walk me through what you do at neruolifestyle?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I'm a full-time chiropractor. I'm a full-time doctor. So we're seeing patients full-time, and the neurolifestyle is really just a passion project for me. And now it's kind of blending more into like a self-improvement lifestyle, which is why we talk about fasting. We talk about the keto diet. We talk more about how do we optimize our brain-body connection? Like, how do we make this brain a super brain? And how do we allow our brain to become like our biggest asset to do whatever it is we want to do in life? So a lot of my passion is just providing training and education and just as many resources as possible just to help people get better control over this. Because like, who doesn't want to be more productive? Who doesn't want to have more energy? Who doesn't always want to continue to grow and develop and get better and better? And the key to being able to do that is having a brain that can keep up with you and can do all those things so you can learn faster, be more productive, and just get more out of life, right? And to be happier, be more motivated. And that's all neurochemistry. And so for me, my passion is providing as many tools and upgrades, this is what I call them, as possible to help people do that. And that's what the neuro lifestyle is all about.
Yeah. So if you're working with someone for the first time and they're asking you for advice on how they can, and I'm mostly just asking selfishly for myself, but how they can how they can get started, for lack of a better term, hacking their to that like optimal functioning level.
Yeah. So for me, I think the first step is understanding like what in your lifestyle is not serving you right now. So for some people, maybe they're working out really well and they're like doing great in that specific category, but they're really kind of slacking in terms of like their diet. They really need to start changing things up. Maybe they just heard this podcast and they're like, I kind of want to try this fasting or this keto. But maybe let's say somebody's really on that, but they're not on their exercise. Like they need to kind of look at those too. And then you get into the whole other animal of, like the personal development side. What's going on in your internal dialogue? What are you doing in terms of like how you start your day, how you end your day? So there's so many different facets of it. So I always say like, let's tackle the big thing first, because as soon as you tackle the big one, or even just like even little ones, as soon as you start tackling those steps, it triggers this response in the brain that allows you to tackle those others. But if you look at the whole thing and go, oh my God, I got so much to work on, or where am I going to start? It's a huge animal. But if you just say, let's just tackle this one thing first. Let's tackle, fasting. Let's tackle, fasting. Let's get started changing my diet. You just tackle that one by one, and we can start working through the systems together. And then we create this lifestyle around that's now serving you, and it's continuing to help you adapt and change. So I wish there was a easier way to say it, but it's kind of like you just got to figure out, because everybody's individual, right? Everybody's different. So what works for you may not work for somebody else. And it's just finding like what's the big kind of missing link for you that's going to help trigger you into your next step. Like what's kind of not serving you right now. And maybe for you, maybe your diet, maybe it's your exercise, maybe it's the mental side of things, but we'll figure that out and see what's going to serve you best.
Okay, so once you have that sorted out, so you kind of figure out what's serving you, what's not serving you. Maybe it's best to pick one of those and say, okay, well, I've found out that since we're talking about keto, I found out that it's my diet. Where do I go from there?
From there, well, one is we provide like training for the keto diet. And so then we get you started on the ketogenic diet, get you rocking and rolling on that. So that'd be kind of like the first step is like, all right, let's get you wired in on that. And that usually will take a couple weeks, if not to like a month and a half, right? Because the ketogenic diet is a little bit of a process for that. And then the big thing that I see, especially with the ketogenic diet, especially is, everybody's different in terms of what your goals are and what your lifestyle is after you become what we call fat adapted. So after 3 to 4 weeks, your body gets good at burning that fat and you get what we call keto adapted or fat adapted. And so from there, then there's tweaking that needs to take place. And so if somebody were to see my diet now, they would go, all right, well, he's not keto 24/7. Well, I'm also doing high intensity exercise like 6 days a week. I'm very active. I need slightly more carbohydrates than most people, but that's just the tweaks that we need to make because everybody's individualized. We don't want to get stuck in the diet box too. So I think that's really, really important. And so we definitely start there. And then from there, especially if let's say we start with the ketogenic diet for most people, it's let's try fasting. Let's see if your body handles that well. And let's see if you like that. And then from there, you start intermittent fasting. And then we start looking at what other supplements can we start implementing. And then it's all based around what that person's goal are. So let's say for you, it's like, I do want to be more productive. Okay, well, let's see what kind of things we can do in terms of other aspects of your diet that's going to give you more energy to be more productive, keep your brain clear so that you can just get focused and more concentrated every single day.
Okay, so got the diet sorted out and we're eating well. And, I'm like, okay, well, so I'm full on keto after a month and a half.
Nice.
Where do you go from there? Like with is there specific types of exercises or habits or routines for on the what did you call it, the personal development side of things?
Yeah. So in terms of like exercise, like one of the biggest posts that I did was on what's the best type of exercise. So in terms of like maximizing your brain power, especially to get the most out of your brain, it's going to be two. It's going to be your aerobic exercise and your high intensity exercise. Those are going to be the two there. And so, high intensity exercise stimulates BDNF production. BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And essentially what it does is it makes your brain more neuroplastic. It makes it more changeable, more adaptable, and more resilient to stress. So BDNF is a really powerful brain protein, and high-intensity exercise stimulates that, but it also stimulates tons of fat loss, ramps up your energy, your metabolism. Really powerful there. So the other aspect of that is going to be your aerobic training. And aerobic training actually stimulates the production of more brain cells, helps detoxify the body, increases your aerobic capacity, which transfers to all other sorts of exercise. So for most people, I say you need to have at least at the bare minimum of the aerobic and high intensity training. So for me personally, I do high intensity training 3 to 4 times a week. The other days I'm doing aerobic training, hiking, things like that. And then from there, depending on what your goals are, if you want to, look more chiseled and have a, different physique, then you start adding in the resistance training to kind of like build the temple, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're saying high intensity, you're talking about like high intensity interval training. You're talking about, more of like when I hear that, I think of like CrossFit type of stuff where it's like circuit training.
Yep.
And then
exactly.
Aerobic, you kind of gave some examples of that: running, biking, rowing, and then so help me break this down a little bit. So do you have a recommendation on the number of days or times per week per type of workout? Because you said high intensity aerobic, and then is that anaerobic, or is that building the temple? Is that anaerobic exercise?
Yeah, so the resistance training?
Yeah, yep.
Yep, exactly. So what I always tell people, one of the best things you can get is an HRV technology, whether it's on your smartwatch or your app, especially in the beginning, because some people have a tendency to overdo it on high intensity training. High intensity training is very metabolically demanding on your body. And so for someone who's doing high intensity training in the beginning, they may only be able to tolerate like 1 to 2 days a week of high intensity training, especially if you've never done it before. Like one of the simplest ways I say, to train your high intensity training is go out. And this is the simplest workout I can give you is you just run 30 seconds as hard as you possibly can. Now, obviously warm up before, do all this stuff, stretch, do all that stuff. But like you run 30 seconds as hard as you can and then rest for 1.5 minutes. So you have this 2-minute window, 30 seconds, you're sprinting like as hard as you possibly can, like you're getting chased by a lion. You rest for 1.5 minutes. And then on the 2-minute mark again, you do it again. Do 4 rounds of that and tell me how you feel. And if you've never done high intensity training before, people will feel wrecked. Like it is so demanding on your system and on your body. By the time you get to that 4th one, you're like, no more. Like I'm done. And you'll find like recovery is a little bit more challenging for that because it does take a lot of energy for the body to do that. And so we use HRV for heart rate variability. If you don't know what that is basically analyzing your nervous system to see how well it's recovering to the stress that you're putting on it. This is the simplest way I can put it. And they have them on watches, and it'll basically give you a score. So let's say you do your high intensity training. The next couple of days, you may be getting a low score on your HRV because your body's still trying to heal and recover, right? But as soon as you have a high HRV score, that lets you know you can go out and crush it. You can go out and crush your run, whatever it is that you're doing. So what we do is we use HRV as kind of like a monitoring system. And I use it on myself personally because I have a tendency to overdo it because I love working out. I use it as kind of like a self check-in to say like, is this a good day to work out or is it not? So even this morning I took my HRV and I'm low on my HRV. I got a low score today. So even though I want to work out really hard today, I'm not going to because I need to let my body heal and recover And so we use that as kind of a monitor. And so for a today like today, I'm going to do like a nice long run, just let my body kind of flush out and recover a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So HRV is
heart rate variability.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that we clearly define that. So when you're talking about HIIT training, essentially is like, so I got really into that probably 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, somewhere in there. All this everything starts to run together at some point in time.
It's all a blur. I blacked out.
I blacked out. I don't know. It was all that HIIT training. I couldn't remember. But I remember the very first day I went in, I was like, I'm in okay shape. You know, I can run, I can bike. I think I made it 11 minutes. And then the guy who was training the class, he was like, well, I can't have anyone die in here, so I think you're done for the day. I'm like, oh, shit. I'm done for the day. I'm like, oh, shit. I was just like laying on my face, like, is this for real? But, you know, after working up from like, you know, I think I made it like 15 minutes the second time and working your way up, I think once you get to like a point where you can actually go hard for like 45 minutes or a half hour, however long, it's like one of the most rewarding things you can do because I feel like your whole body just gets kind of flushed, right?
Totally. And I'm sure you probably noticed a difference like in your energy being able to do that longer too, huh?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because like I didn't feel like I got I got a little bit stronger doing it, not a lot stronger, but I just, you know, I think if you want to just shameless, or I don't know if it's shameless, I don't know, something like that. If you want to look like you're in really good shape and you don't really want to do a ton of like powerlifting to like get really, really toned.
Totally. And it's great for when you're on the ketogenic diet too, because high intensity training helps your body create more ketone receptors. So it helps you burn fat better, which can help you get more fat adapted quicker. And especially if you're doing it on the ketogenic diet, you're just going to burn loads of fat while you do it. So it's a great supplement to the ketogenic diet as well.
Right. So walk me through a little bit of like what ketones are, because I've heard you mention them a few times. Yeah. And one other quick little tangent. I see a lot of these like MLM things popping up where it's like, buy ketones. And I'm like, wait, why do you want to buy ketones? I don't. So maybe explain me what ketones are and if I should be, you know, signing up for one of these MLMs and getting the monthly box or whatever.
Actually, now you mentioned I'm part of an MLM. I'd love to sign you up on mine, actually.
Did you want to take me to Did you want to take me to Panera Bread and tell me about your new business that is actually your MLM?
All you got to do is find 3 people and we're going to be set. Okay?
Yeah.
You find 3 people, it's perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
No, so ketones are essentially when you have fat. Let's say fat gets broken down into ketones. So same when you have like carbs or sugar, they get broken down into glucose. It's like basically the building block for your fat, essentially, and ketones build into fat. And one of the most common ones that you'll have in your body is something called beta hydroxybutyrate, which is BHB. And ketones are essentially what your body breaks down, and that's what's used as fuel. That's why it's called the ketogenic diet, because you're trying to help your body produce more ketones, essentially. That's why it's called the ketogenic diet. Now, the whole thing you're seeing with like ketones out there and exogenous ketones, they're basically broken down fat that are bounded to like a salt. So they'll be bound to like magnesium or calcium or something like that makes it a little bit more palatable. And that allows you to like put into a powder, and make it taste like lemonade and all sorts of different stuff, right? And essentially the whole purpose of that is to give your body more ketones so that it can start burning fat more efficiently. And there's many different reasons why you'd want to use it. My big thing with this is it's always sold most often as a weight loss product. And I don't like that because I think that's very misleading for people. Because yes, it does help your body burn fat, but that does not mean your body's gonna be burning its own fat. Because you imagine if you're putting fat into your body and your body's burning that fat, how can that mean it's burning your body's own fat if you're putting more fat in for your body to use, if that makes sense? So the main reason I help people or teach people to use exogenous ketones is especially during your keto flu window. So like that initial phase where you're trying to get more fat adapted, the best way to help your body get more fat adapted is to help it use more ketones, which is why exercising on the ketogenic diet is so important, because it helps your body create more of those ketone, gets you fat adapted or keto adapted quicker. When you put in exogenous ketones, or when you drink this drink of ketones, it's doing the same thing. It's giving your body more ketones to burn. It's going to give you more energy, so you're not feeling so lethargic. And then, as you go through life, like I really don't use exogenous ketones much anymore, every once in a while, but it's really just kind of like a nice way to just get more energy. Let's say if you're intermittent fasting, or if you just want like a little pick me up instead of having the caffeine, you can use exogenous ketones, things like that. So if you'd like to sign up for my MLM, I'll just send you like a quick email real quick and we'll get you started.
Oh yeah, no, I think you sold me on it. So is it under $800 a month, or am I gonna have to take out a second mortgage to afford this one?
Definitely the second mortgage.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, once I get my friends and family to all sign up, then we'll
yeah, exactly.
All right, back on track.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
All right, God damn it, ML. Just remind me of an inside joke that I have with another friend of mine where like I get people reach out all the time. They're like, I got this idea for a business. I want some feedback. And whenever it's Panera Bread, it's always like Amway or some MLM. So then they'll be like, hey, can I take you to Panera and buy you a coffee? And I'm like, is this an MLM? And now people are like, no, it's not.
No,
it's
no.
not. No.
It's an opportunity.
I'm starting my own business. I'm like, no, you had to pay someone to start this business. So that's actually not true.
That's not what this is.
Yeah.
That's not what this is.
So how does this information, like with diet and exercise, how does that affect your chiropractic practice?
So this is just like another supplement for our patients. So we use this, like all our patients get all my resources and my training for free because obviously they're getting, care in our office. So for our patients, it's just another way to kind of help them out and to give them more information because, within our time in our practice, there's only so much that I can do to help them, right? Without spending hours and hours, of doing the research and walking them through and educating them. So it's a great way for most of our patients now when I see them in the office, and we see most of our patients on a regular basis, to be able to go, hey, here's going to be a resource for you. Just use this training tool that I created. We have like a keto course, a fasting course. Now we're going to have a neuroplasticity course. We got all these different courses. It's like, just go take it. You can learn yourself. You have questions, come back. And so we use that as kind of a helpful supplemental resource because if we're not changing our patient's lifestyle, then what I do is only going to be, surface level, right? It's like teaching somebody to fish versus handing them a fish. And that's essentially what I want to be able to do is to help teach them how to create a lifestyle that's going to keep them healthy long term. Yeah,
that's really important. I feel like I heard something recently on like the Joe Rogan podcast, or it's already too late. Like they have to, you're basically teaching, like a lot of people are just like not taking care of themselves. And by the time they're having issues, it's like, now they have to have emergency surgery or some type of surgery. Whereas if they were taught a little bit earlier about some lifestyle changes that they could have made, then, they wouldn't have those types of challenges that they're having now.
Yeah, exactly. I even think of, I haven't shared this on a podcast before, but I grew up not really knowing my grandpa that well. Like we were really close, and then he got arrested when I was really young, and we just didn't really have a great relationship for a while. And then by the time I got into college, we actually started reconnecting, and we got really, really close. And was in this like year span that I started getting really close to my grandpa again. And like during this time, if you haven't talked to your grandpa in years and you haven't really connected, like you want to reconnect, you want to like rekindle this relationship. We're talking about girls I was dating in college and starting to rekindle like that relationship. And it was awesome. And then like 3 months later, we found out he had cancer and he was gone. Right. And so I think about those scenarios where, a lot of times you don't think about it in the meantime and you're like, oh, this is just, I just want to eat whatever I want. But you don't think about the future lifestyle that you want to live. Like, do you want to be able to travel? Do you want to be able to like run with your kids? Do you want to be able to hold your grandkids? Do you want to be able to do and have all these amazing experiences? You can't do that if you don't have your health. And I think that's like a very often, overlooked thing. And so now I think to myself, like, I want to make sure I'm healthy so that I can be that crazy grandpa, like 70 years old, who's like, throwing gainers off the diving board or like going snowboarding, like that's how I want to be. Cause I've seen people who are like that. And I've seen, grandparents who have been able to do that and parents who've been able to do that. I was like, I want to be that dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and you are on the exact same page with that then, because and I feel like I could take out that clip and just make it like the promo for this.
Yeah.
But it's refreshing to hear that, because I don't hear a lot of people thinking about things that way, not just with health, but just through life in general. It's like, like 5 years from now, what decision would I wish I would have made today? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And thinking about it in that way is like, you're not guaranteed that next 30 years. So Like, what about 5 from now? What would you wish you would have done? What about a year from now? And I think applying that to health is so important because, you know, I can think of tons of even parents or grandparents or people even slightly older than I am that, you know, that are having some health issues or some mobility issues. And they kind of have this mindset where they're just like, well, that's just the way it is. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to. I'm like, if you can find one person in the world that has overcome that mobility issue at your age or older or a worse one, and you can maybe learn from them how they did it, or maybe follow some of the keto stuff or start getting into like the HIIT training or just moving, you know, I think it's all perspective and thinking about it from like, where do you want to be versus where you are now?
It's a bigger picture. It's, you know, I always say I'm not trying to start a keto cult, right? Like I'm not trying to start like this mission where like everybody needs to be keto. If you're not keto, I don't want to talk to you. Like there's people who find me on Instagram and will like bash like my keto posts and stuff like that because they're like paleo or like they're on some other diet. I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, do you feel great? Like, are you able to live the life that you want? Like, that's the ultimate goal. Like, I don't teach these things and I don't teach intermittent fasting because like I joined some club or I joined an MLM. I do it because it helps me live the life that I want to live. Mm-hmm. And if paleo helps you do that, great. Like I've just done the research on keto and I like what the research is saying and I like how it helps me and how it's helped my patients. And that's kind of where we're going. It's the bigger picture of health is your vessel to be able to do the things that you want to do in life. It's not the religion. It's not the cult, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember there was some doctor, somebody smarter than I am that said something along the lines of, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter. Like there's a lot of diets out there that will work, but it's more a matter of just getting into like eating healthier and moving more. And if you find a program that works for you, whatever it is, and you just stick to it, like you're going to have a lot better of a lifestyle. Like, you know, one of the things I hear people say all the time, which makes me kind of roll my eyes, they're like, well, you know, you're going to die someday from something. And I'm like, well,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, well, here's the thing is like, if I'm still here in 80 years, I want like a good quality of life, you know? So I hear that all the time. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but do you want to be like bed bound when you're still around? Like, what do you want it to be like when you're still here?
Yeah. What's that quote I've heard? It's saying something like most people who neglect their health for their wealth end up spending the later part of their life using their wealth to get back their health. Something along those lines. It's like the same thing, but I even think even in the now, you know, like how many people are out there wishing they were happier? How many people are out there wishing they were more motivated? How many people wish they could like just think more clearly, have more energy, things like that? Your diet makes such a huge difference into your neurochemistry, right? Like all the feelings that you have are neurochemistry. Like how much harder is it to make a decision when you're unmotivated? How much harder is it to be happier when like you have no energy, right? Or like to do those things that you want to do, to overcome fear when you have no energy, to be able to do those things. That's all neurochemistry. And so if you're letting those become excuses for you not being able to live the life that you were meant to live, or like from not fulfilling your purpose, then you can't use that line, right? You can't say like, oh, we're going to die sometime, because now your diet is affecting you from living your full potential. It's affecting you from living your purpose. Yeah. And now that's affecting all the people that you interact with in your community who need who you are, right? That's my opinion. Yeah.
It's almost like you're taking that away from people in your future. Like you're taking you away from people in your future. Like you said, you want to be doing, I love that quote. I want to be throwing gainers off the high dive when I'm 70.
Yep.
It's like when you can't do that when you're 50 or in your late 40s or whatever, and you have kids and grandkids, like you're taking that experience away from them. It's not just you anymore. It's your effect. How you take care of yourself and how you show up affects everyone around you.
Okay.
Right. And I'm really enjoying this conversation because I feel like it went from like diet and exercise to just being the most badass, best version of yourself you can be.
That's my mission. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah. Is that like your motto at your chiropractor clinic? You know, just be the badass version of you or something like that?
Yeah. Reconstructing the badass version of you. That's our motto.
That's awesome. That's a great motto. So
actually going to change that right now, actually.
Yeah. Let me order a sign and throw it up, make giant neon letters, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Hanging right outside our window.
Right. Maybe you can start an MLM with that tagline. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
So that pretty much wraps up like the first part of the interview. So the last part is really like some of the questions I ran over with you before.
Nice.
So I know you've kind of talked a lot about like the different types of exercises, the personal development stuff. But is there anything that you do you try to do on a daily basis that you feel like? Let me rephrase that. Is there anything that you do on a daily basis that you feel like helps you to, show up as the best version of you or win your day?
Yeah, for me personally, and this is going to sound really cheesy and really funny, but like when I start my morning, the first thing that I make sure that I do is I set the intention or like the tone that I'm going to do the things that I'm uncomfortable doing. And one of like the first steps to doing that, so that, like I teach my brain that like I will do the hard things no matter what, is taking a cold shower in the morning.
Oh yeah.
Which sounds super funny, but like it really is true. Like there are so many times, because I'll always do it. I'll start my hot shower, I'll do my stuff, and then I'll sit in a cold shower for, a minute or two and let my body acclimate to the cold. And I tell you what, every single time that I've neglected to do that, where I've just been like, oh, the hot water feels so good. Like it feels so nice. I just like this so much. It's cold outside. It just always seems like when the day comes around, like I'm just a little bit more lazy. Like I'm just not as motivated, like I'll kind of like cower away from doing the things that I know I should do. Maybe I'll skip my exercise for that day. But when like I set the intention that like, no matter what, even though I don't want to do it and I do it anyway, and I complete that cycle of action, it just sets the tone for the rest of the day that like, no matter what, I'm going to continue taking other steps that I know are going to keep pushing me forward, even though I don't want to do them. And that's like one of the most important things, as cheesy as it sounds, that I do every single day, just to make sure I set that intention for the day.
Yeah, I've taken a few cold showers myself. That was actually part of my routine for a period of time. And it's always like, you kind of have to mentally prepare as you're turning the knob. You're like, all right. And then it kind of hits you and you're just like, like the initial, like it's you'll know what I'm talking about, the listeners who haven't done it, but that initial like cold, like after you've already been in the warm shower for a while and that initial cold blast hits you, you just want to shut it off and like get out. But if you can make it through the first like 15 seconds, at least for me, then it's like not that bad.
Just focus on your breathing.
Yeah.
That's the only one. It's like, that's why, I don't know if you heard the Wim Hof method.
Yeah. Yep.
It's basically the same thing. That's why he does like, you focus on your breathing and get more control. But it's like the first time I started doing it without knowing anything about the Wim Hof method, it was just like, as soon as that cold water came out, I was just, oh my God, just pure panic. And then it was like, all right, if I just focus on my breathing, we're all right.
Yeah. That's, I was actually focusing. So I agree with you 100%. I do that as well. So I'm slightly claustrophobic. And when I was in Europe, we went to this like castle in Czech Republic, a town called Kutnahara, and they have like a medieval mine there. So I'm claustrophobic. And so we're going down this like long, like it's like very tight, and you're like kind of bent over, and you're just like, all right. And you're just like, if you just keep breathing though, it's fine. Like as long as you keep doing that first, like, then it like actually, even claustrophobia like calms it down after a while. And then once I was adapted to it, then I was like, oh, this isn't too bad.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
Not thinking about the walls closing in on you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good takeaway. Just focus on your breathing when shit's just hitting the fan, and everything will be fine.
Everything will be good. You'll be all right.
Right. All right. So favorite or most impactful book that you've read?
I'd say I'll give you the most recent one, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. He's the founder of Mind Valley.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with Mind Valley.
One of the best books that I've ever read, hands down.
All right.
Hands down. Just kind of like the way he lays that book out, and is everything that I've always thought, and he just put it into like super clear action steps on how to take control of like your mind, how to set up categories and things that you'll stand for, what you won't stand for, how to like break the rules. It's just an awesome, awesome book.
I like the sound of that because it's different. I actually, typically when I ask that question, I get a lot of either books that I've heard of or books that somebody else has recommended or another guest has said, but I've never heard that one suggested. So
nice. Nailed it.
Nice win for Dr. Brady.
Crushed it.
So one of the last questions, is there a message that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I think it's right on the second section that we were kind of talking about this podcast interview is your lifestyle more of an impact in your life than you recognize. So take control of every aspect of your lifestyle and upgrade every aspect of your lifestyle, and you'll crush life.
That needs to be on a poster.
I just make that one little long post format.
So if anybody wants to check out any of your let's say your Instagram or any of your work you do at Neruolifestyle, I need to work on my grammar. Neruolifestyle. How would they find that information, or where do you suggest that they go?
You can find me anywhere on social media at Dr. Brady Salcido, and then the Neruolifestyle is just theneruolifestyle.com, or you can type in drbradysalcido.com.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Formula, and another big thank you to Dr. Brady Salcido. I had a lot of fun talking with him, if you couldn't tell. If you want to follow any of his information that he has about optimating at your highest level physically and mentally, go ahead and head over to the Neurolife tips and advice that he provides on improving your diet. Also, you can head over and follow him at Dr. Brady Salcido on Instagram and see what he's up to. So anyways, that's a wrap for this week's show. Thank you again for tuning in. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson. Oh, and one more thing. Go ahead and head over to theformulapodcast.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter, where we will be sending out podcasts, weekly tips on how to improve your daily routines, your mindset, maybe some money management or wealth tips, maybe some advice on getting your first business off the ground or getting into a fitness routine. So yeah, head over there if that sounds like something that is interesting to you and you want to figure out how you can put together your own personal formula for health, wealth, happiness, or achievement. And we look forward to seeing you next time. This episode of The Formula was produced by This episode of The Formula was produced by Helix Academy, and the music was provided by the artist known as Moods. Make sure and check him out on Facebook or Spotify. That's MOODS. Moods. Make sure and check him out on Facebook or Spotify. That's MOODS. S.